In July 1988, I was a DEA special agent coming to the end of a 3-year tour of duty in Lahore, Pakistan. My wife Ginny and I decided to take our 8-year-old son Tor on a vacation before we moved. We flew to Athens, and on Monday morning, July 11th, we boarded the cruise ship City of Poros for a day tour of 3 islands. After shopping at our first port of call of Hydra, we were back on the ship at around 1 o'clock for lunch. 3 young people were sitting at a table next to us, 2 women and a man. I noticed the women were speaking French, but the guy never said a word. It seemed strange to me at the time that the women were so animated and the man seemed kind of withdrawn and silent. After about 15 minutes, they got up and left. We sailed on to the ports of Poros and Aegina. On the return trip to Athens, we went to the top deck and found some chairs to sit and take a rest. About 40 minutes later, I went below deck to double check on our transportation back to the hotel. All of a sudden, I heard automatic weapons fire coming from above. I tried to go back up and couldn't because passengers were coming down the stairs in a panic. At the same time, there was an explosion that tore through the ceiling of the deck I was on. Wood and metal flew everywhere and water began pouring from a burst pipe. I couldn't get back up the stairs. As I climbed over an outside railing to get to the upper deck while all hell was breaking loose, I heard my son screaming words that will live with me forever. "Mommy, Daddy, the man shot me." I could see Ginny coming across the deck toward me. I saw at least 1, maybe 2 bodies lying on the deck. The gunfire became more erratic and was coming from the other side of the smokestack, which was amidsship. I quickly checked for wounds on Ginny and didn't see any, but Tor had been nicked in the chest by either shrapnel or possibly a bullet. We climbed over the rail to the deck below. The next several minutes were pure chaos. Several people were injured, some with burns resulting from the explosion and the fire. A lot of passengers jammed into a lifeboat, but nobody knew how to work the winch to lower it. Crew members were nowhere to be found. Another passenger and I opened a locker and handed out life jackets. Once we got our own life jackets on, I told Ginny we had to get away from the kill zone. I told her we had to jump off the ship, but Ginny wanted nothing to do with that. I told her we didn't know how many shooters there were, but at least 1 was on the deck above us and he had already used explosives. We made our way to the stern and could see boats coming our way. I helped Ginny over the rail and she jumped into the sea. By the time Tor and I jumped into the water, I had lost sight of my wife. After what seemed like forever, but was probably only 15 minutes or so, Tor and I found ourselves being pulled out of the water by the crew of a fishing boat. It was then that I saw Ginny sitting on the deck shivering. All I could think of at that moment was, thank God. We got back to port with other survivors and were taken to a hospital. Fortunately for us, our injuries were minor and we soon were back in our hotel room. I then called the U.S. Embassy. The State Department Regional Security Officer, the FBI Legat, and another FBI agent came to our room to take statements. During the interview, Ginny identified the shooter as the same young man who had been sitting next to us during lunch earlier that afternoon. We gave physical descriptions of the shooter and the 2 women with him. The next morning, the RSO returned with 2 Greek police officers and photographs of all 3 individuals that we had positively identified. We learned later those 2 women had nothing to do with the terrorist attack that day.